Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Greetings, citizens. Oh, I screwed that up. Greetings, citizens.
Now we're not going to redo the intro. That's staying in. What's a science fiction movie podcast? We talk about sci-fi movies on this show. We have been working through the current MonsterVerse, which is probably about to come to an end. I don't know if there'll be any after Godzilla vs. Kong, but we did Godzilla 2014 last time, so this time, naturally, we are doing Kong Skull Island, which came next on the list. 2017 this came out, and yeah, so we're going to get into it. We'll give our opinions. Obviously, we both saw this at the time when it came out in theaters. We both watched it again for this podcast, and we'll dive into this slightly different reimagining of Kong, and it has to be different because the original story of King Kong doesn't work if you want King Kong to A, be more of a hero that can be in a shared universe, and B, go on to be in more shared universe movies. So we can't do the Empire State Building, we can't do the Beauty Killed the Beast, we have to do some different things, which honestly, if I'm going to get a positive out of the way first, I would say that maybe is the one thing that maybe benefits it is that it's forced to kind of do a few different things that aren't just the King Kong story again. So, what are your feelings, your general feelings on Kong Skull Island?
It's okay. I don't love it. I know a lot of people critique the last Godzilla we reviewed about the human characters being like kind of dull. I think this tries to make them too interesting to where they become awful characters for the most part, or just like nobody's got any kind of arc. Everybody's trying to be a comic relief, and it's really not very good, with the exception of some of the lines from John C. Reilly. He's pretty funny sometimes, but yeah. And the Kong stuff is decent. He's not quite as sympathetic as I thought he was going to be, which is a bit of a negative. He looks good. I like that he's big. You know, one of the reasons they had to reboot it also and make a difference is that he's got to be big enough to take on Godzilla, right? So he's got to be big.
Which he isn't yet. Like if he was still this size in the new movie, he'd be tiny compared to Godzilla.
Yeah, they say he's still technically like an adolescent in this.
Yes, so they're saying that he's still got some growing left to do, just to explain why he happens to be Godzilla-sized in Godzilla vs. Kong.
Yeah. Overall, like it's a bit of a disappointment, but it's not a terrible film. There's a lot that I like in it.
Kong Skull Island to me is a really weird mixed bag of a movie. It's probably something I would say is a disappointment in the sense that the obvious things to make me feel for Kong and maybe build a relationship with some of the characters fails miserably, and I don't think I remember getting to the end of the movie that first time I saw it and just kind of feeling like just kind of indifferent. Just sort of, yeah, it's okay, there's a Kong's fighting some things, it's okay, but not really feeling any particular emotion towards anything. And it's funny, you brought up to compare it to Godzilla 2014. I think one of the first things we should talk about is the human character. I think talking about the human characters and then the monsters was very much something we did in Godzilla 2014, and I think we're going to do it here again with this. The human characters in Kong, what's funny to me about this movie is that people give Godzilla 2014 shit for Aaron Taylor-Johnson. I keep wanting to say Anna Taylor-Joy every time I say Aaron Taylor-Johnson's name. That his character is really bland, and that the humans in that movie aren't that great. I think the characters in this movie make him look like he's from like a character study film piece of a bygone era. The characters in this, and it's what's so funny about it is I would definitely say that Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston and Samuel L. Jackson, but he's a very different role, but I'm just talking about the heroes specifically here. I would say that they are better actors than Aaron Taylor-Johnson, but I think that their characters in this somehow are some of the most bland, forgettable, like almost blank pages of characters that I have ever had the misfortune of like having to sit through. And I think that one of the big key differences is that Aaron Taylor-Johnson in Godzilla he at least has something he's fighting to, which is to get back to his wife and get back to his son and have this happily life with his family that he wants. And even Bryan Cranston at the start of the film is all about, yeah, make sure you cherish your family, because I lost my wife and I didn't really pay attention to you once that happened because I was obsessed with the mysteries and whatnot. Don't make my mistakes. You know, go be a husband and a father, live your life, blah, blah, blah. This movie, Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston in this movie, they don't exist for any other purpose than the confines of what happens in the runtime of this movie. And you never feel anything else.
Yeah, they try to make Tom Hiddleston like the cool bad guy who's the reluctant hero slash mercenary. Like his introduction is like this really over the top scene in like a bar or nightclub where he's like got these sick moves and we're like, oh, okay, he's a badass who can fend for himself. Like he's the one who's going to lead them through the jungle because he can fight people with a pool cue. But I don't know. Every time like he's in the jungle, he kind of just looks too pretty to be there to me. like he doesn't look like he's part of that time or part of that world even. Yeah,
actually, to talk about that pool cue scene where, you know, the first time you meet him, John Goodman and his sorry, it's one of the few actors in this that I don't know from a million other things. His name's Corey Hawkins apparently, but Brooks.
Yeah, he was in Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah, so John Goodman takes Brooks to this bar in somewhere in Asia, and they're there to find Tom Hiddleston because he's the best tracker there is. He's the best tracker, and they're going to find him. And when they come out of the bar, and it's not even just a bar; it's like there's like prostitution going on. It's, you know, one of these seedy little like places, and they come in. And there's this very quick scene of him, like, sort of, like, he's playing pool for money and he wins, but then the guys try to, like, fight him so they don't have to pay him. And it's, like you say, it's just this quick little action scene. And it feels like the director saw a scene like this in another movie and wanted to just quickly as possible sort of do the same thing, but without any of the actual pacing or build-up. Because I think other movies that do this type of introduction for your badass character is you have a bit more of a build-up to the moment where the villainous characters in the scene will like try and turn it sideways or try and double cross them, and it'll show, but it comes across as so quick and so just bullet point like pieces of a scene that by the end of the scene I'm like, I feel like you're trying really hard to make Tom Hiddleston seem cool and you've not convinced me. And then on a similar,
he did a really cool thing, but I don't know if I buy it.
And then in a similar vein, I think Brie Larson suffers almost the exact same thing, where she's set up as this war photographer, or an anti-war photographer, she points out. And there's a quick little scene of her in a dark room, sorry.
There's red lights.
There's red lights, but you know, it's a dark room. Look, they're kind of an ancient thing now, alright? No one uses dark rooms anymore. But she's looking at photos and she gets this job because she believes in conspiracies. And that's basically it. These two characters, and they're not even love interests, even though there's like a couple of glances of like, I don't know, attraction maybe. Vaguely.
I mean, they're both beautiful people, so it's kind of implied, I think.
I think that's the big problem I have of it, is that everything's so vague with these two characters. There's very little arcs to them. The only arcs they really have at all is that they both kind of want to like help Kong by the end. They both go from being indifferent to wanting to protect Kong from evil Samuel L. Jackson, and we'll get to his character in a minute. But that's basically their whole thing. Neither of them have arcs. Neither of them have gone in believing one thing and then... Because I thought with him, because at the start he's basically a mercenary. They offer him money to go and be a tracker. He's not actually in any kind of like service agency anymore or anything like that. So you're thinking, oh, maybe he'll learn to care again by the end of the movie. There's none of that. There's not really.
Right. I mean, I think it's like Goodman's character who says to him, like, people who don't leave the jungle unless until they found something they're looking for or whatever. And then it cuts to Brie Larson. So it's kind of implied like, okay, she's going to be the thing that he is really looking for.
But then there's no romance.
But then there's no real romance. There's like there's like one hand holding scene, but it's out of panic. And then like he goes to try to save her at one point, and again, it's nothing really happens. So
this is something that I've brought up with
confusing.
This is something I've brought up with horror movies before, where they're so scared of doing cliched or doing stereotypes that they go so far in the other direction to not be a cliche that they effectively do something really either bland or just, in this case, I would say they go so far away from not wanting to have the typical romance in a movie like this that they effectively have nothing. There is nothing between them. And it just
I really think the only reason Brie Larson is in the film is just because they wanted to have a female character for that will connect with Kong in some level as like an homage to the original film.
And even that is very thin. Like
very thin.
Paper thin. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. The characters in this are so, and there's a lot of other characters as well. John Goodman is the head of Monarch, which is the shared universe thing that was introduced in Godzilla. But this is the 70s, of course, we're set in. And they let you know it's the 70s. There's a lot of music and stuff. You know, we're exiting Vietnam and we're going to play songs left and right in the soundtrack. They let you know. John Goodman's the head of the Monarch, and he is trying to get this permission to go on this mission because they found Skull Island and they want to go to Skull Island. And they convinced the dude from Jenkins from 6 Feet Under and Cabin in the Woods and various other things. They convinced him.
Step Brothers.
Don't. I know John C. Reilly's in this, but let's not drag down the tone with a Will Ferrell movie, please.
How dare you? Step Brothers is great.
It's trash. It's positively trash.
Have you seen it?
Yes, I've seen it.
And you still think it's trash?
Yes, I was forced to watch it because I made my opinion of Will Ferrell very clear, and someone said you have to watch Step Brothers, it's the best. I watched Step Brothers, my opinion was unchanged.
Well, my opinion of you has changed.
Trash. Actually, sorry, to keep it on brand, straight up garbage. So you've got him. And there's a little bit of backstory with John Goodman's character, with him saying he was on a ship in like the 40s or whatever, and like they covered up what happened to it, but he saw some sort of monster. There was something underwater that took down the ship, and that's why he's been obsessed with finding monsters his whole life. No one else really believes it, except he's Brooks' assistant dude. And even he's kind of skeptical. He believes in something else that's kind of also a little crazy to most people, and so they've kind of found each other. But that's kind of it. Other than that, you've got all the soldiers who are with Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson's kind of the antagonist of the film, because he is the soldier who has nothing outside of being a soldier, and therefore he has to find a reason to fight. And because they've left Vietnam, they've abandoned that war, as he puts it. He doesn't want to say they lost. He needs something else to hunt. He wants to have a purpose. Everyone else wants to go back home to their families. Everyone else wants to go and start a business or do something else. He wants to be a soldier. He wants to be a good soldier. And he becomes obsessed with hunting Kong. That's his thing.
He becomes Captain Ahab.
Yes. And then you've got a variety of other characters, who are the various pilots and soldiers and the squad. Some of them, you reckon Shea Whigham's in this movie. I like him. He's a dependable character actor.
Yeah, I like him a lot too.
Yeah,
I don't really like him so much in this.
I think he's fine in this. Actually, he's got the best line of dialogue in the whole movie.
Okay, sure, but he's dependent so much. Him and Eazy-E, who's the other straight out of Compton guy whose name I don't know, but they have this rapport, this back and forth throughout the film that's supposed to be a comic relief, and I just don't think it's very funny.
No, I agree, it's not very funny. I think some of it has the problem a lot of modern comedy does, where it doesn't cut away for a start. I mean, it's debatable if any of the jokes would be funny anyway, but there's one in particular where it's when they're just getting into the helicopters before they go to Skull Island, and is Eazy-E, you said?
Well, that's who he plays in Straight Outta Compton.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, he's Mills in this. I just checked. He's Mills. So
okay,
Mills says something about, why is the Sarge taking us out, or the Colonel I think is, why is the Colonel taking us out here when we could be going home to our beds? We were on our way home, blah blah blah, and this basically the joke becomes, wait, don't you want to be in your bed? To Shea Whigham, it's like, do you have a bed? And then it could just cut away there, but then it stays on him for an extra couple of lines, and he's like, no, seriously, do you have a bed? Do you have a bed? Do you seriously have a bed? Like, cut Golly!
It's too
Stop
much.
it. Stop it. But Shea Whigham does have the best line in the movie, though. There's a random moment after the first big attack when all the helicopters have came down, and he opens like a tin of food and just starts eating it with a spoon. And the one interaction between these two characters that I really like is that Mills says to him, what the hell? How do you even have a appetite right now? And Shea Whigham just goes, he just sort of shrugs and goes, eating's for the living. I don't know why, but for some reason I really like that line.
I don't know why you like that line. Like, it's fine. I thought you meant like the more dramatic moment he has later.
Oh no, no.
Not his like final moments, but like it's he has somewhat of an okay line like later on. But as far as the comedy goes, it really is more of a miss than, I don't know if any of the lines made me laugh. A couple of John Cena ones. There's a funny one about ants that I liked. That might be it.
Like I say, it's not even that I think the line's funny. I just like it. I just think it's a good line.
He's a really likable guy. Like he's a really likable like character that when you see him on screen. He was in Vice Principals, the HBO series, where he like every line he had was just absolute gold, and he's such a likable guy that is supposed to be the main character's antagonist, but he's just so full of nothing but nice, and he's so hilarious. Like, I enjoy every time I see him on screen because of that show. But I think it's just, yeah, like what you said, it's just poorly directed.
John C. Reilly, have to talk about him. He's probably the one character that I when the movie came out, he was the only character that I heard anyone say anything nice about. Really, it was like he was the one memorable character, because the movie opens with a pilot in World War II crash landing, and then a second pilot from Japan also crash landing, and they're fighting each other, sort of chasing each other and trying to kill each other, and then that's kind of, we get our first tease of Kong. But then of course the big thing is that when our characters in the 70s arrive here, this young man has grown into John C. Reilly, and he's been living here since the 40s, and he's a little bit kooky, a little bit crazy, but here's the one thing that I said Aaron Taylor Johnson had in Godzilla, which is he has something to go home for. He has a wife and potentially a fully grown son. That I mean, maybe she's remarried, but even if she has, I'm sure he still wants to see her and see how his son is and like see what the world's like.
Yeah, he's been thinking about her cast away on this island for 30 years.
Yeah, it's like, I don't think he's great in the movie. I think he is the best out of a bad batch of characters, is how I describe him.
I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, not all of his lines are funny to me, but he does have the comedy that works, because I think he is just a really great comedic actor, and he's got so much personality on the screen that it's hard not to like him.
I'm conflicted. I have two big comedy problems, and I think you actually like one of these, given something you said earlier. But this is a PG-13, and PG-13s have their one F-bomb. And I think the one F-bomb that this movie has is the weirdest one F-bomb I have ever heard, because it's so worthless and just random and doesn't... Because you can have your one F-bomb have a great moment. It can be a great bit of impact, because you've saved up your F-bomb. It's a moment of tension or a moment of comedy. And what's weird about it is John C. Reilly, he says something about watch out for the ants. And he looks up and goes, no, seriously, they're really big ants. So he's already made his real point. But then he just adds on a second line and goes, yeah, they're really effing big ants, or something to that effect. He just throws in a random F-bomb, but it's like an afterthought like line. And I just every time, like, I remember when I got to it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this from the first time, and going, what the hell? Why is this your one F-bomb? Is this weird moment? Later on in the film, we actually get Samuel L. Jackson almost saying mother effer, right? Because of course it's Samuel L. Jackson. He has to go through his
you think you would save it for Sam Jackson.
Yeah. But they give it to John C. Reilly for a really weird moment. The other John C. Reilly scene that I really want to complain about, and this is what I hate about modern comedy so much. So John C. Reilly is giving them exposition about the island and about Kong and about the potential villains, which up until this point haven't really been introduced yet. This is the first time we really hear about them. And he's talking about the villainous monsters that killed Kong's parents. And that Kong's good at dealing with the little ones, but there's a big one. If the big one ever comes up, Kong might be screwed because he's not full size yet, blah, blah, blah. But when he's talking about these villainous monsters, right, this is the real threat. He's like, well, I mean, the natives here, they never speak the name, but I call them skull crawlers. And there's this weird awkward moment where both Hiddleston and Larson kind of stare at him, and he's like, well, I just kind of made that up right now, but it's like, but I'm trying to scare you because I'm trying to make it clear that it's serious. And Hiddleston and Brie have this moment where they're like, oh yeah, I mean, I'm fine calling it. You fine calling them with that? Yeah, it sounds killing me.
Yeah, it's really not good.
I hate it. I hate this scene with a passion. It's so drawn out and trying to be funny. It's trying so hard to be funny, and I'm like, you're not being funny.
I know. There's a lot of that in this film. Just like everything. I think it is. I think a lot of his stuff was improvised.
Mm-hmm,
and,
sounds like
I mean,
it.
I think the ant line is pretty funny, but I don't think it drags out. Because I think he's just like, he's talking about like, there's ants the size of birds. And then there's like a bird call. He's like, you think that's a bird, but it's an effing ant. Like that's, and he says it so serious, like, okay, that was kind of funny. But, and it doesn't drag out any further. But that one that you just said, like, yeah, that one drags out a lot. And it just kills any amount of humor that might have even been in that scene.
Yeah.
I do really like the scene though. Like, I like the way like the murals all come together and stuff. I thought that was really cool.
So yeah, a lot of characters. There's some other minor characters that are in there, of course. But
Toby Kebbell's kind of a minor character for some reason.
Well, this is a weird one because he's actually playing Kong, as you pointed out to me. I won't take credit for knowing this because you told me this. Yeah, I think so. Like
in some places he's credited as Kong, and some places he's not. Someone else is credited as Kong. So I'm actually confused of whether or not he does play Kong.
I suspect maybe it's a case of I don't know. Maybe just
because the guy who plays Rocket in the Planet of the Apes movie is also credited to play Kong. So I'm not sure. I think I heard the director say that Toby Kebbell played Kong.
Yeah, Toby Kebbell's kind of an interesting case because he may or may not have played Kong. So this human role is maybe more of a extended cameo. I honestly, my weirdness with Toby Kebbell is not so much that he has kind of a short lifespan in the movie. It's more that his scenes, because he gets separated from everyone else kind of relatively early on, and he has a bunch of scenes on his own that just kind of ultimately just serve to give you a couple of big action sequences, because the main plot is, you know, moved on from dealing with Kong for now. So we have a couple of random scenes where he just kind of ends up running into things happening so that we can have some stuff happen when there's nothing else interesting going on.
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be the goose of, by goose I mean like Top Gun goose of the crew, where like he's the one who's got something to live for. He's always writing his son. So we're supposed to be like hoping that he's the one that makes it out. And then, but the stuff that happens to him is just like back to back, just unfortunate things to the point where it feels like the movie is picking on Toby Kebbell. And I don't know. I don't really like it. Like, I think his character is kind of treated unfairly, and then he's sort of cut short from the film. That, I mean, he's a big enough actor, I think, that he should have had more. I think there's too many characters. If they were consolidated a bit more, that would have been very helpful.
I'll be honest, after Fantastic Four from 2015 and his performance in it, I am okay with him being treated badly in everything I ever see him in.
I love Koba.
Yeah, but he doesn't have, Koba doesn't have Toby.
Toby Kebbell and Isaac Clarke. Yeah, I always do that. You do that too. Or you call him Jason Isaacs. Isaac Clarke.
Do I?
Yeah, it's happened before.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, check the tapes. But Isaac Clarke and Toby Kebbell, I mean, they were both in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, so I want them to be successful, but they just have the worst agents who give them the most horrible roles, and they should be good. They should be great. Mm-hmm. And he is a good actor. I think Toby Kebbell is a good actor. He's just, I don't know.
Gary Oldman went through a period like this. There was a time when Gary Oldman, he'd just been in like Batman Begins, And other than the next couple of Batman films, he was in nothing but just like was it The Unborn he was in, and then he was in something else, and
he was a pretty established actor by the time he was in Batman Begins.
He was, but it was like everything aside from those movies, though, he was just in complete trash, like, constantly. It was weird. It was like, man, get a new agent, because you're getting given just nothing but dregs.
Yeah.
So,
anyway, I'm still rooting for Toby Kebbell. And if he did play Kong, he did a fine enough job, I guess. But
one of the characters that doesn't get a lot of time. You talk about Toby Kebbell's character being treated poorly, right? Or cruelly, perhaps, one might say. Mm-hmm. I would say there's another character that I actually think is unjustifiably treated cruelly in a way that really sticks out. And I mean this on two fronts. On one front, I'd forgotten until this repeat viewing that there was a character who has a death that's actually oddly similar to that really over-the-top death from Jurassic World with the assistant.
Yeah, you're right.
There's a character who's like picked up by birds, and like we see like it's in silhouette, but you see like arms been ripped off, and it's like really over the top. That character, though, I want to point out that character, he's like one of the head scientists, right? Who's there to like do the geographical study of the island and so on, right?
Yeah, they might as well be wearing red shirts.
I mean, yeah, them as a whole, but he actually, like, that character disputes that they should go to the island because the storm's too bad and they should reconsider and, like, recalibrate and think of a better plan. And he's treated like he's the weaselly, cowardly, like, little villain one. And I don't understand why. He's actually right. He's the sensible one. And then he's sensible later, and then he gets killed in the most brutal way possible. And I'm like, why is the movie treating this character like he deserved that death? He was right.
I mean, we just watched the 1930s Kong, and I mean, I loved watching everybody get stomped on and chewed on, and like, it was fun. Like, yeah, you shouldn't be there. You guys deserve this. But this, I don't know, this movie seems like really cruel with its deaths, and to the point where it's just, I don't know, I'm sort of neutral on them. Like, I like a lot of the monsters designs. We haven't talked about them yet, but I do genuinely like them. But like, there are like 3 deaths in this film that I genuinely hate. Because I don't like. I think it's a weird character beat, or it's meant to be almost laughed at, but it just comes off as like too cruel for it. Or it just kind of made the character feel useless.
I'm going to disagree a little bit, because while I'm saying this character, the science character, is treated very cruelly, and I feel that way because he's almost giving this joke death as like a punishment for actually being the sensible one, even though he clearly was right the entire time. I do think, to get into some, spoilery territory here, I think Shea Whigham's ending is insanely amazing, and the reason why I
hate it.
No, the reason why I'm saying this is because they give him the moment that every movie like this has, where the character is going to sacrifice themselves to protect everyone else, to give everyone else a chance to get away, and he like uncooks a couple of grenades, he takes the pins out, he's walking in with his arms outstretched, and he's like, come for me, you son of a bitch, I'm right here, do it, I'm here, do it, kill me now. He's having that moment, right? He's been all heroic, and the monster, the skull crawler, whips him with his tail, sends him flying, and he explodes like a mile away from the monster. It does no damage whatsoever, and it is kind of darkly funny, but I kind of appreciated the subversion. It almost felt like a parody of other like monster adventure movies in a weird way.
I think it was supposed to be a parody of war films, because this is a war film. And he has like that Platoon poster pose when he's doing it, like he's going to sacrifice himself, with the Charlie Sheen moment with the arms in the air, and yeah, the monster just like obliterates him, and it's totally useless, and it's supposed to be comedic, but I hate it. Like, I think, like, I don't understand like the point of it. I think that it's not, it doesn't come off as funny, it just comes off as like stupid.
So Shea Whigham's character earlier in the film has a scene where he explains why he has the gun that he has. He doesn't carry the same type of rifle that everyone else has, and he explains that he got that from a farmer in Vietnam. And the point of his little speech, the little story that he tells, is that sometimes there's not an enemy until you go looking for one. You know, that this guy never fired a gun before, this guy never been in a fight with anyone. But because America chose to get involved in this conflict, because they were the invading force, essentially, this guy had to take up arms, and now he was this enemy that he had to put down. And I think there's a sense of guilt that he has from that. And I'm trying to, in my head, connect this with his ending, because I think it's interesting that he does throw that gun down. He's like, no, I'm not using this. I'm just going to go in with the grenades. I mean, obviously that story lends itself to the film as a whole, because the whole idea with Kong attacking them when they arrive, he attacks them because they're dropping bombs on the island, and this is Kong's home where he protects the natives. Of course, Kong's going to be like, to hell with this.
You're screwing up the ecosystem by being here.
Yeah, I'm going to start slapping choppers out the sky, you bitches, is basically his response to that. And obviously Samuel L. Jackson takes us, he is the enemy, we must put him down. But it's almost like, no, Shea Whigham's character is thoughtful enough to realise that, oh, maybe this is, you know, all this is. He clearly is, because he doesn't have all the same exposure to the other characters that, like, because Hiddleston and Brie Larson, they have scenes with John C. Reilly, where they get the exposition, they get the backstory, they're told that Kong is the protector, they're told that these other monsters are the evil. Shea Whigham and the other soldiers don't really get that until really late on, because they're with Samuel Jackson, because they're in two parties. They get that much later.
Yeah, he's telling the story to Goodman's character.
Yes. And yeah, so I think I can't explain the part. I'm trying really hard. I'm trying really hard to give it a purpose. And
you know, I think it's meant to be funny because it's unexpected. And sure. I mean, it would be like, obviously it's going to be the monster versus Kong and not the monster versus Shea Whigham's character. So I mean, we don't actually expect him to be able to do much, but it is sort of a trope to where people are like, I'm gonna stay behind and buy you guys some time, and then everybody like doesn't, because they're trying to save him, they don't actually get that much time bought. So his death is like actually just useless.
There is that. I think the main thing it's making fun of, though, is that he ultimately does nothing. Like, it's playing up into us thinking he's going to have this heroic moment to save them time, and instead all he does is die in a really stupid way, like miles from the monster. I think that's ultimately what it is, and it's the sort of thing that maybe if I really was super invested in the characters of the movie, it might not have been as funny to me. I think it worked in the moment for me because I was so detached from everything that but it's true as well that Shea Whigham is one of the more likable characters in the movie, partly just because he's Shea Whigham more than anything else. Because there's like a young soldier who's with them. He's actually with the Hiddleston team for most of the movie, the one with the red band, like the red bandana or whatever he is. He is like an engineer, and he's kind of the young guy. He's got the baby face, and he has the moment where he's the first one to kind of like stand up against Sam Jackson when Sam Jackson's trying to get them to kill Kong, and I couldn't help but feel that, again, this would be another example of having too many characters. Is that we're spread between we're spreading what plot beats we have and what big character beats we have between too many characters.
Plus it probably doesn't help that they get separated so quickly in the beginning of the film, so they don't really feel like a team. It does feel like two separate groups the whole film.
Yeah, it's funny actually. It's actually like 40 minutes in. See if you actually pay attention to the time. It's one of those things that I have this with a lot of movies where you don't really realize just how late or early something is, because it feels like, oh, it's the end of Act 1, it's early in the movie, but when you actually look at the time, like, oh wait, that's like 45 minutes in before they split up, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, Act 1 is like getting the team together.
Yeah, almost to a fault, where it is just like a roll call of, here's Hiddleston, here's Larson's introductory scene, here's the platoon's introductory scene with Samuel Jackson.
For Larson's for her introduction when she's on the phone, I read this in the trivia that she was actually on the phone with Thomas Middleditch, who's going to be in King of the Monsters.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, he would be too young to be in the same role, but for some reason she's on the phone with him. Like, it's his voice that's on the other line.
I mean, neat, I guess.
I guess.
Honestly, the shared universe elements of this, just to talk about the post-credit scene. I know this is a weird order to do this in, but...
Yeah, I don't really understand what we're doing, but that's okay. You'll fix it.
Yes. The post-credit scene is kind of the laziest post-credit scene you could possibly think of, because it doesn't really set up to build anything. You've got Brie Larson there, you've got Tom Hiddleston there, you've got Brooks and Asian lady who's been with the movie but has barely had any lines of dialogue. They're there and they explain to Hiddleston and Larson, hey, it's not just Kong, there's more monsters out there, and it's okay, so far so good. The problem I have with this scene is two things. One, you're setting up, this is your Avengers moment, right? This is your Sam Jackson at the end of Avengers saying, hey, there's a whole world that you're unaware of, it's not just this one thing, there's more. However... Or
the file that they're opening up in the desktop for the Batman films, or for the DC universe. The one where they click on all the icons for the characters. I haven't watched that movie in forever. I don't even know which one it's from, to be honest. Batman v Superman?
It's for Batman v Superman. But I'm comparing it to the Avengers one particularly because it's kind of the same message, as that this monster world is much bigger than you know. And then they proceed to show them images of things, right? My two problems with this is that, one, these two characters who are getting this information are never going to appear in any of these films ever because of the time period they're in, right? Like, unless there's some sort of time travel, maybe if Kong had been a success, they would do like a Kong 2 that's still set in the 70s and we'd see them again. I don't know. But it's not like Hiddleston and Brie Larson are going to show up in, Godzilla versus Kong, right? And we're going to put old age makeup on them and have walkers like, we're coming, Kong, we're coming to help you.
I suppose they'd probably be recast if that were the case. Or my issue with it is that, like, how much information did those other two characters have when they went to Skull Island? Because I think they knew that there was, I don't think they knew about monsters.
Goodman did. Goodman did,
but the other two did not.
But the whole thing is pointless because none of these characters are going to be part of this shared universe. The whole thing is pointless, right?
Well, we get to see like Rodan and Ghidorah.
Well, that's problem number two, though, is that all they show is a roll call for all of the monsters that are going to be in the very next film, which effectively makes this nothing more than just a teaser trailer for Godzilla King of the Monsters. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It feels like, hey, here's all the names.
But when you were in the theater and you saw Ghidorah, did you cheer a little bit?
The first time, yes, because I hadn't seen Ghidorah yet with this budget and with in this universe, and I was like, oh, the tease Ghidorah. This time seeing it, I was like, this is a shit post-credit scene. Like,
it really is.
None of this matters to anything or affects anything.
Why would they? I mean, I guess they could just recruit them, like, you're part of Monarch now because you've seen Kong.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the gist of it, is that they are recruiting them, but to what end? Again, I can only assume
they seem to be there against their will.
I can only assume that if this did well, like if Kong made a lot of money, enough to say we want more Kong sequels as well as the crossover, there'd be more movies set in this time period.
There'd be like a 1980s Kong film.
Yes. They do the X-Men thing where they'd have an 80s Kong and an 90s Kong. Yes. But if that was the case, though, if that did happen, then this post-credit scene teasing Rodan, Mothra, Ghidorah, and Godzilla would feel even more weird because they wouldn't be getting to those characters, those monsters.
No, not until 40 or 50 years later.
Yeah, so they'd be interacting with Kong again and possibly other random monsters that might fight Kong.
Yeah. Probably not Zilla, even though he is in the, like, opening credits, like, a bunch. But I think Godzilla disappears between the 50s and, like, 2014 or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing that bugs me actually about this continuity-wise, is that in the 2014 Godzilla, it makes it pretty explicit that the Navy were trying to kill, or at least the government were trying to kill Godzilla. That's actively what the supposed nuclear tests were, is they were trying to kill Godzilla. And yet, in this movie, when John Goodman says, hey, I believe there's monsters and we should go and do a thing, everyone's like, don't be crazy. Like, but honestly, if I'm going to give any jokes a pass and say that was actually kind of funny, is at the start of the movie when they go to Richard Jenkins, because he's like a senator or something, and they're trying to get him to approve this trip, and he's trying to describe why they're going there, and he's like, hey, this island's never been discovered before, and because it's the storms that are always around it, the ships have disappeared for years, and Jenkins makes a joke about, so it's like the Bermuda Triangle, or the tinfoil hat where blah blah. I did laugh a little bit at Goodman's line, it's more like the triangle than the hat. I got a slight chuckle out of that line. I thought that was slightly funny.
I'm glad that worked for you. That was my first warning sign of, oh no, they can't even make Goodman and Jenkins funny.
That's fair.
I mean, Jenkins is always funny.
I think a big part of this, obviously, is the script. Another big part of this is the direction, which obviously the actors are part of that because they're directed, but it's funny. You sent me a message earlier about a trivia about how the director Jordan Vogt-Roberts, he was inspired by video games of his youth, and what's really funny is thinking about that when I think about this movie is that it's kind of hollow, like an old video game in a lot of ways, where it would be fine in a video game where you have the gameplay and that's how you connect with it. So the fact that the story and characters are a bit thinner, not as big a deal. It's like if the game is really fun, then fine. But a movie doesn't have that, so you're left with what feels like a lot of. And I don't mean they look like video game cutscenes. I'm not critiquing the look of the film. I'm critiquing how hollow the film overall feels.
Yeah, I mean, well, video games don't follow the same sort of structure as a film, and that's why when you play a video game, like, you could think the story is amazing, but it probably doesn't translate very well to film.
Yeah, because you're engaging with it in a different way. There's different tools being used to connect you to the story, interactive tools. So it's a very different thing. But there's
I sent you that trivia because apparently there was a helicopter crash was inspired by a Resident Evil thing, which is like your thing. But and also the design of the monsters is apparently based off of a Pokemon, which is not our thing, not our wheelhouse.
No. Although you did say there was some Mewtwo's in Godzilla.
Yes. So there's one more connection. The Pokemon shared universe.
That's all they are. They're just giant Pokemon. That's all this is. So
I guess we'll be watching Detective Pikachu next.
Oh, please no. We spent a lot of time talking about the humans. There's a lot of them, and I feel like they are fundamentally just... Despite the fact you've got a lot of good actors, you've got Hiddleston, you got Larson, you got Goodman, you got Jackson, you got Jenkins, you got a whole host of actors, Shea, Whigham, top to bottom, you get an all-star cast. So when you have this cast, and I'm still not really connecting to any of the characters,
there's something else wrong.
And it tries real hard. I mean, just to go back to Hiddleston for a second. So not only did they try to make Hiddleston look cool at the start of the movie with the pool fight scene, right? They also tried to make him really cool by giving him this really weird moment in the coloured smoke where he puts on a gas mask.
Where he becomes like a samurai.
Yeah, he grabs the samurai sword, the katana that John C. Reilly has, which because the backstory with him and the Japanese pilot is that they became best friends, surviving on this island, which is a sweet idea in and of itself.
Well, yeah, once they realized there was something bigger than themselves, that bigger than the war they were fighting, that they had to become allies in order to survive, and through that became friends. It's kind of sweet.
Yeah, it's kind of sweet. But there's a moment in this because they get into like the sort of the big graveyard, right? They're traveling through the graveyard. The evil monsters have left all these carcasses and whatnot, and it's kind of misty and foggy. But at one point, there's some like colored flares or gas grenades or whatever are set off, and Hiddleston he picks up a gas mask from like an old corpse or something and puts it on his face, and he starts swiping at these like bat-like monsters in slow motion, and I'm like, what movie am I watching? Where did this come from?
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those, oh yeah, he's supposed to be the cool guy who can like swing around a katana or a pool cue. Yeah, his character is not good.
I've never seen a movie try this hard to make someone cool, but but fail in a way that's not even. Because I think when you watch some really bad movies and they try to like, some like Mystery Science Theater level movies, and they try to make their main character seem like the cool guy, like they'll just fail spectacularly and it's really funny, or whatever. But this just comes off as so, Well,
that's the thing with being cool, right? It's that it comes naturally. That you don't. In order to be cool, you can't try hard, and everything in this film, when it comes to the human characters, is try hard.
And not just through their dialogue and their like actions, even just the direction and how they're like how they're shot, how they're perceived.
Yeah, it sort of becomes like a slow motion fight, and it's a little bit of 300 in there.
Yeah, like if they just sort of had like a moment, okay, he's going to like pick up the katana and like whack some bat. Maybe it's just a bad idea in general. Maybe it is, but. It just, I don't know, there's probably ways to do some of the scenes in this movie with his character that they wanted to do, but just direct it completely differently and it would work, because it would be more confident. And I guess that's the point, is that when you're trying so hard, it's because you lack the confidence just to be cool. And I guess that kind of goes for direction too, in a weird way.
Sorry, director.
Sorry, yeah, no, we're shitting all over the director today. Sorry, Mr. Roberts. Sorry.
Have you seen any of his other work?
I don't think I have. Let me click on him just to make sure that...
It looks like he's going to be directing a video game movie. He's doing a Metal Gear Solid film.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm happy that I don't really have any attachment to that, so I don't have to worry about it. But he did Kings of Summer, which I think did have some buzz when it came out, but that seems to be kind of it in terms of, movies. He's done some TV episodes. He did a video short for Destiny 2, another video game thing. So let's take a minute though to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. They are all $20 or more as patrons, which is why they're producers. Tara, would you like to inform them about Patreon?
Yeah, if you're a fan of our reviews, please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MildFuzzTV. And if you donate as little as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus episodes of The Ace. And if you donate $5 per month, you will get access to our Ace reviews 1 week early. Yeah, we haven't really talked too much about Samuel L. Jackson either.
We should talk about his character more. You're right. Yes, go on. What's your thoughts on Samuel L. Jackson's character?
I understand why he's there. This is a war film. He's supposed to be. He represents America in over their heads. If he's America, then Kong is Vietnam, and he's entering in his world thinking that he's got the hubris to be able to take him down, but he doesn't know where he is. It's not his world, and his obsession with Kong in order to make the lives lost have a point. I sort of get I get the motivation. I think he's just a bit over the top, and there's even a point where they're zooming in on his eyes after they've shown Kong's eyes, and his eyes twitching with madness and stuff. I'm like, okay, movie, this is a bit much.
Also with slow motion, there's slow motion flames, I think, or explosions happening at this moment.
Yeah, and again, when his demise comes, it's just so quick and it means nothing really. It's just sort of they wanted to make this Apocalypse Now war film that gets invaded by King Kong, but it loses the effect of both the monster and the war movie by trying to combine it to me.
I would disagree that they're trying to make an Apocalypse Now movie. I would agree that they're trying to borrow a lot of visuals from Apocalypse Now. I think that's definitely there.
I mean, the posters were like all Apocalypse Now.
I roll my eyes so hard, actually. There's a moment right before Kong first attacks the helicopters. There's like a close-up of like the aviators of one of the pilots, and he's just smirking as his napalm. He's loving the sight of napalm in the morning because he's just grinning from ear to ear.
Oh yeah, I mean, we have all the Vietnam music, rock music.
Actually, this is probably a stupid complaint, but I'm going to make it.
I have one too, and this is the same one.
All right, maybe it's the same one. Right? How stupid it is that one of the helicopters starts playing Black Sabbath, because I don't care. None of those other helicopters can hear that song. I don't care how loud that's playing. All these choppers going, all these rotors. No one is hearing that music.
Okay, yeah, it's not the same complaint. My complaint is that you have a Vietnam movie and you don't use the song "Fortunate Son."
It costs too much.
It's in every Vietnam War film.
Well, maybe that was them trying not to be too cliche. They just used every other 70s rock song. And some of these montages, I think some of them are fine because they give you like there's an early one on the ship before they all leave in the helicopter where we're getting to know some of the soldiers. Brie Larson's taking photos of the soldiers, and that's all fine, I think, because it's setting up. There's one later on though where they get to the village of the natives, and it's when they start to fix the boat up. There's a montage of Brie Larson taking photos of the natives.
Yeah, well, she's a photojournalist. That's what her job is there, I guess.
Yeah, but it's this really happy montage where she's grinning and smiling. The music's really upbeat and happy. And I'm like, you were just in like a really insane thing where a giant ape like killed dozens of people and you might not get off this island alive. The tone just felt way off to me in this scene. Just way off.
Sam Jackson also like plays his greatest hits from other movies in this one.
They hold on to your butts.
There's also like a line that reminds me of Jackie Brown talking about the AK-47, but he's talking about a different type of weapon. Or I think maybe he's even talking about helicopter blades. I don't know. There's just a lot of like Sam Jackson's greatest hits in this film. It's fine.
I mean, even the fact that he dies saying, mother effer, but he doesn't finish it, obviously, because PG-13 and whatnot, and that's meant to be the joke. It makes his death play for a laugh if he's truly the antagonist, because if the core thing of this movie, right, if the core thing I'm supposed to care about is that he's trying to kill Kong, and then eventually our hero characters say, you know what, no, we're going to stand up to him, or we're not going to let him, I should care about that. I should be rooting for them to stop him. So his death shouldn't be just played as a joke. It shouldn't just be played as a, ha 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 ha, he almost said his line and he got slapped by Kong. All. Yeah,
or like I mean, even if he represents like the America invading Vietnam, like the fact that his troops turn against him because they say, no, this is wrong, you're wrong to want to defeat Kong, like we shouldn't be here, that's like supposed to be the big turnaround also. But then again, like his death just feels so goofy.
Yeah. His death bothers me. I don't necessarily have a problem with some of the other ones, but his death does.
I don't like his death. Me. I don't like Shea's death, and I don't like Toby Kebbell's death. Those three, I just don't. They seem so silly to me.
Yeah, Toby Kebbell's just kind of feels like quick shock death. Like that's it.
Yeah, like what was the point of his character? We kept going back to him, and then he's just gone.
It makes it really hard to feel. I mean, I will say, just on the cinematography, as much as I critique the direction for the most part, because I do think it rushes through moments that don't have the gravitas that they should, and while I do think some of the shots are a bit too over the top, there are one or two good spectacle shots. The one that's in the trailer, which is the Kong in front of the sun as the helicopters are flying towards him, is a phenomenal shot, right? It is a spectacular visual. And if there's one thing I would keep from the movie, it would be that shot. I'd get rid of everything else, but I'd keep that shot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So fair play. I have to give credit where credit is due.
I like when Kong, like when Toby Kebbell's like washing in the pool of water, and Kong just sort of shows up to like wash himself also of his wounds. Like I think those shots are really good. I I like a lot of the shots of Kong, and some of the other monsters we get are pretty fun.
Well, let's talk about that scene. Let's talk about the scene with Kebbell and the water. I think the point of that scene largely is to show, like you said, so he's washing his wounds and then Kong washes his, so it's to show the look, see, Kong's just one of us. He's washing his wounds. He can be hurt. He's not a bad guy. And it's kind of also an excuse to have, he fights a big squid
and eats it.
It is.
Yes. I like seeing him eat it. We don't see a lot of kaiju eat each other.
No, it's probably one of the best scenes in the movie. Even though I think in the context of the movie, it feels like we're kind of wasting time because it's not really that important. But on its own,
also Kong is super sneaky, even though he's in a mountain.
Kong is super sneaky. This is something they all share. The kaiju can be sneaky whenever they want to be for some reason. He ends up having this big fight, and one of the things that I liked, because one of the things we said that Godzilla did so well with Edward's direction was the sense of scale. I think one of the few times in this movie that I really got a great sense of scale is when he throws like part of the tentacle into the water, and the it actually hits quite near Kebbell, and the splash is so big. I'm like, that really sold just how huge the difference is in size, like just how minor Kebbell is compared to him. So it's a fine scene. It's a fine scene on its own.
And it's nice to know what Kong eats. I mean, he's too big for this island. So.
And you also see him drinking. That's the other thing I like about that scene, because that's before he fights the squid. He just takes a big mouthful of water and takes a drink of it, and it's like, it's nice to see that he actually eats and drinks, and presumably also sleeps. And
Kong doing his thing.
Yeah, that stuff's
fighting a giant monster.
Do you know, Kong actually disappears for a long time after that.
Long time, yeah.
The only exception is when John C. Reilly's explaining who Kong is and the backstory. It does cut to him fighting the little versions of the skull crawlers a little bit, but after that he is gone until Jackson and co lure him out, basically. Oh no, I tell a lie. There is that one small scene with Brie Larson trying to lift up a helicopter. She's not realised that she's not quite Captain Marvel yet, and she can't lift up a helicopter. And
Kong is sneaky and sneaks up on her.
Kong is sneaky and lifts up. But this is the moment where he sort of recognises, hey, you're not so bad, and she's like trying not to piss herself, basically. Right. But it's it's an okay scene on its own.
I mean, I like the look of Kong. I don't find him to be as sympathetic as I wanted him to be, which is unfortunate. But for the most part, like I'm really happy when he's on screen. Like his scenes, although there aren't that many of them, are pretty good. Like I love his introduction. I think, like, we think we're getting a war film, and then all of a sudden there's a giant ape throwing trees at things. It's kind of nice to have. Obviously we're not going to get the Empire State scene, but we get the introduction of Kong fighting off helicopters instead of the ending of him, which is kind of cute.
Can I ask a question? Why do you keep saying you think we were getting a war film? Because as far as we know, or as far as the characters know at least, there's nothing to fight. So...
No, well, it takes place in Vietnam. All of our main characters are still in Da Nang, like they're on a base fighting or flying towards Skull Island. It's shot like a war movie.
It's shot like one, but I never get the feeling that it's pretending to be one, just because, like, obviously, because if anything, it actually becomes one once there's something to fight. For Samuel L. Jackson, he's hoping it's going to be a war movie, and it's not until Kong shows up that he's like, really, yes.
I guess once they're on Skull Island, it sort of becomes like we're in enemy territory and we need to get back home, which is very much like a lot of war films.
Yeah, they're trying to draw parallels with Vietnam, and that's why I think the Shea Whigham story about the farmers kind of probably one of the more important character beats for the whole premise of the film. Admittedly, I don't think it goes deep enough with it, and I think while Kong, I kind of agree and disagree that he's sympathetic or not sympathetic enough. On the one hand, I actually think I kind of like that he's not just like super heroic. It's more just that he's decent and he recognizes when someone's sticking up for him. He recognizes when she's in trouble.
He's way more interactive with the humans than Godzilla.
Yeah. That said, though, I do kind of hate the scene where they just kind of randomly run into him. It's just Hiddleston and Larson, and they're up on like sort of the edge of a cliff or trees or whatever, and Kong just kind of like steps out of the fog, and they just have like a face to face where she touches him, and I felt that moment was unearned. I'm like, you're trying to pretend to me to have this bond now, and I don't really buy it. So this scene feels really forced.
Yeah, I mean, the reason Kong was attacking them was because they were dropping bombs on his island and letting loose the skull crawlers.
Skull crawlers, yes.
Yeah. So he doesn't really have any reason to trust them or to get close to them in any way.
If anything, it might have been more powerful, because after this, you know, Hiddleston and Larson say, we're going to stop Jackson, we're going to stop him from killing Kong. Because Jackson's whole thing up until this point in the movie is to get to where Toby Kebbell was, because he was next to all the munitions, and then we can blow up Kong. And he's determined to still do that no matter what. The troops are all starting to get a bit edgy because it feels like he's not really caring that we have like a window to get to the exit point, the evac point, and he doesn't seem to be that concerned about it. And there's this moment where there's a standoff, and it's like John C. Reilly that talks down, Bandana Kid. He's like, hey, you know this is wrong, son. You know in your heart that this is the wrong thing to do, and that he's not your enemy. And then he turns his gun on Samuel L. Jackson. I mean, I'm looking at what they've got in the film, and I'm saying to myself, wouldn't this moment be great if this was the moment where Kong sort of like realized that, oh, not all of the humans, like some of them are worth fighting for, that this kid's sticking up for me. Because I mean, they present Kong in a way that he does seem intelligent enough to recognize this was happening, to recognize that this is happening in front of him, that people are essentially trying to protect him, that Hiddleston and Larson kind of step in front of him and say, no, we're not going to let you do this. So
I mean, Kong does save Brie Larson eventually, but it's because she uses the flare gun to help fight the big monster that is attacking Kong. So I mean, they've had a couple of connections beforehand, but I think that's also like the main driver for him. But he doesn't really have any other connections to the other characters except that they, release the monsters through their arrogance or naivete.
Yeah, because there's that one moment with Hiddleston on the ship where they say their plan is, we're going to drop seismic charges to like map the ground based on vibrations, and Hiddleston's like, you're dropping bombs? And they kind of deny it, but it's kind of like the one time you might be like, see, Hiddleston's our hero, because he's like acknowledging the upfront bullshit that this is. He sees it for what it truly is. Yeah.
And Kong is knocked out during the scene where he gets where the one soldier turns on Sam Jackson, and so they all turn on him.
Yeah.
So he doesn't really have that that recognition of who's good and who's bad.
I mean,
I guess he knows that.
When I suggest that, I'm saying make him be awake so he can see it. Like, make this be a moment for him to recognize it. I know in the movie he's actually knocked out and doesn't see any of it.
You want to talk about the other monsters? That's the other big thing about the film, right?
The skull crawlers. I mean,
not just them. We get a few insect-like.
Yeah, there's a few other things. There's some sort of, they're not quite mammoths, but they're kind of mammoth-esque. These are like the friendly herbivores of the island.
Yeah, they look like a cross between a grizzly bear and like a water buffalo.
Yeah, and like this is the one of these things is what Brie Larson's trying to save when she's trying to lift up the helicopter. Again, you're not Captain Marvel yet. Right? I know Loki's hanging around, which, by the way, that's a good point. Godzilla 2014 had Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, and then this has Captain Marvel and Loki.
And Nick Fury. And John C. Reilly is in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Is he?
Yeah, he's in the big trailer moment, right?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, he's the guy on the planet. Yeah, he's like one of the.
He's part of the Nova Corps.
Yeah, he's in the Nova Corps. Yeah, he's the one that Pratt essentially gives the finger to. Essentially,
right.
Yeah. And he has the family. Yeah, because he has that moment in Guardians where he's like, his family's safe at the end, so he's kind of the heart of the planet. You know what? John C. Reilly, his character with less screen time in Guardians of the Galaxy, works better as the sort of a heart of that film. He's not the heart of the whole film, but he's the heart of that planet, so that we care about saving the planet. And that's more effective in Guardians with like 3 scenes than I think his character is in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree.
Just throwing that out
But
there.
I don't hate his character in this
I
film.
don't hate it, but it's just, it's better than the
He's
rest.
the only person who has character in this film.
Yes.
That's not like ridiculous. That's not the right word. That's not overwritten.
But to get back to other monster scenes, so we have the mammoths, who are, we get like one scene early on where they kind of like, the kid with the, and this is kind of, if anything, the kid with the bandana is probably the one who has the arc out of all the characters, because he instantly wants to shoot this thing. He wants to shoot the mammoth thing, and then the rest of them kind of realize, no, this thing's not causing us any harm. He's not like violent. He's
Yeah, and if you start shooting him, he might become violent.
Yeah, he may defend himself, and Hiddleston like makes him put the gun down. And then at the end of the film, the fact that he's the one who turns on Jackson and says, "No, we're not hurting this thing," it's not much, but it is kind of an arc. So I'll give it that.
Okay.
So you have them. You have the giant spiders who like the legs look like just trees, like not any trees, look like these sort of bamboo-esque trees that they're going through. With a thin
I like that one
trunks.
actually.
Yeah, they're alright as a design. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. I like that all the giant monsters on this island all have some sort of camouflage because there's a greater predator out there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Reading like the skull crawlers. I think that's an interesting trait. I like the daddy long leg spider bamboo legged creature. I thought that was pretty cool.
Plus, they have probably one of the most fun deaths, I'd say, when they sort of stab one of the guys through the mouth.
Yeah, and you look over, it just looks like bamboo grew in through him.
It's a fun little sequence. Because Skull Island, of course, has always been like it's supposed to have housed a lot of different big creatures and wacky creatures.
Like all these creatures are new, with the exception of Kong. Like I don't think any of them are repeats from the other films.
I would suggest I'd say they kind of maybe remix some, like these giant spiders are like, okay, we're not going to do the classic spider scene, but we're going to do our own take on, so let's do this type of spider or something. Maybe.
Yeah, and the scene with Toby Kebbell where he runs into like a walking stick, but instead of a stick it's like a whole log, like a tree. I thought that was kind of funny.
It's a neat visual. I like that. I like the idea that they could literally sit in something that it turns out to actually be alive.
Right.
Like,
And the other one is I think it's Shea's character that sees an ugly bird and shoots at it, and then all of a sudden the tree just like comes alive and all the leaves like start flying away. You're like, oh, those are all birds. Like that was a really cool visual. I enjoyed it.
That was Jackson's character, because he looks through his scope and goes, "That's one ugly bird," and then just shoots it, and it kind of tells you who he is at that point. It's like, oh, that's your first instinct, is to just shoot the animal that is miles away and is causing no danger.
Right. It was Jackson. So, I mean, I really enjoyed the monster reveals, the ones that are all camouflaged and then turn into something dangerous. That was all really fun.
Yeah, actually, to go back to Whigham's character for a second. Whigham's character has a moment with Mills where they compare the different interpretations of the lion and the mouse story, and it's, I mean, for comic relief's sake, it's just whatever, it's fine, but obviously it's setting up the idea of the movie where he's misheard that his mother told him the wrong version, where the point of the story is that the mouse is able to kill the lion, and that's why he's saying, yeah, we can take down the big primate. And Mills is like, no, the point of that story is that the mouse befriends the lion because he helps him. And I wish the movie actually really tried to like go into it, because obviously that's the point of the movie, is that humans can befriend Kong, and the Kong will then save them from the other nasty things. And it technically does that, but I wish it really honed in. That's what the arc of the movie is. That's what the point of the movie is. And it feels like it's just kind of there, but very thin.
It feels like that scene is played for a joke, so you kind of just laugh or not laugh and then forget about it.
But I think it's meant to be there as like a foreshadowing, or like a here's what the movie's about,
right?
Kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I think the monster designs are all very cool, and but I don't find them to be as memorable as like the monster scenes in the older versions of the film.
I want to go back to Whigham for a second, because I just thought of a way to fix his death.
Yeah.
Right? No, that's a great idea.
He could take on The lion.
The lion. Well, first of all, actually, that's a good point. Maybe that's the point of that scene, is that he thinks he's the mouse and that's the lion, and then just learns that that doesn't work that way. Maybe that's the point of the death. Maybe that's the point, is that he's trying to be the mouse that kills the lion, and this is like saying, no, that's not the point of the story, so therefore he dies because he didn't understand it. But this is how I think you fix his death and give him more of an arc. You still have him sacrifice himself. You don't have the stupid it fails part, right? You just have him sacrifice himself. But don't have him sacrifice to save the humans. Have him sacrifice himself to save Kong. Right? So then he becomes the mouse that sacrifices himself to save Kong. And I suppose technically that's what Brie kind of does, because even though her shooting the flare is not what gets her, it's not like the monster attacks her because she hits him with the flare. The monster, he just happens to bump into the cliff she's on at one point. It's not like an intended attack. But that's where maybe that's how you make his death work, and you make it tie back into that earlier little conversation about the mouse and the lion story. Is you have him realize that Kong's the thing they have to help, so he learns the true meaning of the story and goes out a hero saving Kong. And maybe if you're not going to have Kong witness the gun standoff, maybe you have him witness this, and this is what makes him see, hey, that human just saved me and sacrificed himself for me. Instead, we get like Brooks showing up with a minigun on the boat, and it does almost nothing, and it's kind of a whatever scene.
Yeah. Well, it happens while Kong is like chained up, which is kind of like, wow, remember the first movie where he was chained up in front of humans? Now he's chained up again. So. Yeah,
I mean, it is nice to see him use the propeller from the ship as a weapon. Of course, the actual ending of the fight is that, so he catches Brie Larson. Well, he doesn't catch her. He picks her up out of the water. She's fell in the water, and he picks her up, and then while she's still in his closed hand, because then the monster starts fighting him again and tries to eat his hand. He then just rips out the innards of the monster, killing him. Because
that'll do it.
He notably tries to go for the jaw snap at one point. Like he goes for that move, but then it doesn't quite work, so he ends up doing something else, involving the mouth though, admittedly. Still a very weak point for these big monsters.
Right.
Go for the mouth, which is easy if you're a big monster. I think if you're a human, going for the mouth is just certain death. But that's just how it is.
It's just a snack. Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel about the actual big final monster fight?
I enjoyed the fight. I don't hate the design of the skull crawlers. I don't know why it's hard for me to remember.
Skull crawlers? Krillers?
Crawlers?
Skull critters.
The Pokemon.
I was thinking critters,
I think...
as in critters in space, and like critters 2. What was the?
I haven't seen any of the critters. I don't know.
You haven't seen critters? Well, okay.
I mean, they're kind of cool design. They have like that killer whale thing where it has like the false eyes that make it look scarier, which is kind of neat. I like the detail that they don't digest bones, so they have to like, after they like digest the parts that they want from whatever they eat, they throw up they regurgitate the bones and stuff, so that there's always a bone graveyard wherever they live. That's kind of cool.
Well, that's kind of the big centerpiece of the movie, is once the two teams meet up, it's probably just over halfway, but because they want to get to where Toby Kebbell's character is, they have to go through this graveyard, and of course John C. Reilly's like, this is insane. No, this is the graveyard where the evil monsters like put all the remains. Like, this is suicide going through here. But of course Jackson won't hear it, and this is where John Goodman dies. This is where we get the stupid samurai sword slow motion and the green smoke scene.
Yeah, John Goodman's death is also one that I don't love. It is just very like, oh well, that's it, he's over.
I think his whole character feels kind of like that, because you want to like him because he's John Goodman, but I don't think it gives you enough either way to really truly feel. I mean, obviously he does kind of get a lot of people killed by bringing them into this island without really giving them an idea of what he's expecting to find, but he never comes off as truly villainous either. He kind of, again, he comes off in this vague middle ground where I just don't know how to feel about him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's consistent.
It's consistently bland and
Yeah, we're pretty negative on this movie, huh?
Yeah. Well, even this, going back to it wanting to feel cool, there's a moment in this, again, this sort of foggy graveyard sequence with all the bones, where at one point after the first monster shows up, Jackson yells out, "I'll set up the 50 caliber or whatever," and there's like a couple of quick cuts, and then it's just like someone set up like the big giant machine gun on top of like the skull of a triceratops, and there's like in between the horns, and I'm like, they're trying really hard for like, that cool visual. They're trying really hard.
I do like that they showed that some of the old monsters from the original film are on this island, or at least used to be.
Yeah.
At one point, though, like it was cool to see just a dinosaur skull.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. It's kind of a neat thing. Actually, do you know what I think one of the big problems with the Skull Crushers is that we don't actually see or get any hints of them until John C. Reilly explains what they are. There's no hints of a greater enemy. There's no hints of anything that the main thing that we should be scared of, that the character should be scared of, or the main thing that Kong has to fight and protect everyone from. It's not introduced until it's being explained by John C. Reilly. So it feels like he introduces them, and then there's a scene with Kebbell, like, 5 minutes later, where he gets killed by one of them. It's like, oh, they're here now, I guess. I don't know. It's unfulfilling.
I think that's a really good descriptive word of this movie, actually. Fulfilling. I think a lot of like what I love about the other Kong movies, not just like the first one, is just the island is so dangerous. Like there is no safe part of this island. Maybe where the villagers are, but like, and they have a wall there to protect them, but like, that's it. Like as soon as everybody enters in, they're in nothing but danger the entirety of the time that they are behind the wall. And although this movie does convey that, like there is obviously a lot of danger and people do die, I don't feel the horror of the deaths, like, or the horror of the island like I do with the other movies. Even the 1933 one, I think, is better at that.
I think because it's so bright and it's almost very sort of network TV looking at times with its color palette, that you never really get a feeling of being somewhere otherworldly. It just feels like, oh, we're walking through Hawaii or whatever. Like there's nothing.
Maybe, yeah, I didn't think about that, but maybe you're right.
I think that may be part of it. If I'm going to give some compliments to things that they have altered here, again, especially with the idea of this Kong that's going to continue into other movies, I do like the idea that instead of being this god that they sacrifice blonde women to, that he is a protector. He does protect them, and the reason why they have this safe part of the island is because Kong kind of guards it in a lot of ways, and it makes him. It's like, okay, so he is kind of heroic, and he does have this natural inkling to help and look out for those in need. The
smaller creatures, yeah.
Yeah, which is neat, and it kind of gives him something comparable to this version of Godzilla that he's going to co-inhabit, and the reason why they ultimately probably will team up to take on what the real villain of Godzilla versus Kong is. I think it's pretty obvious what it is. I won't say it for spoilers' sake.
I think so too.
But I'm excited.
Unless the trailer is misleading us.
It has to be. It has to be. It has to be. Anyway, so I like that part. I like that part of what they've done with the lore. I mean, conceptually, there's nothing wrong with this movie. Like there's nothing where I'm like, oh, I can't believe they made that choice for Kong, or they made that choice for how the island works. I'm fine with everything, like, conceptually. It's more just how it feels, and the character journeys and arcs just not really either existing or being so paper thin. Like, Brie Larson's, if she's meant to be the woman who has a connection with Kong, it feels so just devoid of anything. Like, I feel nothing for it. By the end, I'm just kind of like,
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I guess it's good to have a more modern female role, and she's not the damsel in distress the whole time. She is playing a character that is like in a war zone, trying to do the right thing to show the world the truth. And, there is a bit of a love interest, but it doesn't really follow through. And although I do think that is, the right direction, I do think it also kind of falls flat for the character, because they've given her kind of nothing.
You have to do something.
She's sort of a proto Captain Marvel in a way, but Yeah, I mean, the tone shifts in this movie are so strange to me, and yeah, everybody's just sort of flat, like one-dimensional, and they don't have enough arcs or anything, or there's just too many of them.
Yeah, the thing with her is that you totally can have a strong character, a strong female character, who does ultimately still need to be saved by the big monster, the big friendly monster. I think an obvious comparison here is Lois Lane. Like, she's not exactly a journalist, but kind of, this is in the ballpark. She's more of a Jimmy Olsen in terms of actual role, but in the sense that Lois Lane gets into trouble not because she's a damsel and because she's dumb. She gets into trouble because she's so damn stubborn. It's a character flaw, but it's a flaw that comes from a place. It's not just, stupid woman getting into trouble, or she can't save herself. She's stubborn and arrogant and hard-headed and all these things. And I'm not saying Brie Larson's character in this has to be that. She could be a number of things. But they give us like a little bit of character at the start where she kind of has a disagreement with Samuel L. Jackson about like what her role is, and there's an interaction with the guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine where he's like, "You're a woman," and she's like, "Yep." But from that point on, so other than those interactions at the start where she faces a little bit of adversity because she's a woman from that character, and then Samuel L. Jackson gives her some shit because, as he puts it, she's the reason why people back home stop supporting the war. And after that point, though, for the rest of the movie, do either of those things ever factor into anything that she does or interacts with anyone? Or
I mean, she keeps taking pictures.
Yeah, but that's not anything to do with the adversity stuff. Can I get an A?
Yeah, I guess she's the more compassionate one. She tries to have more of a connection to the nice creatures on the island and the natives. That's about it.
I guess what I'm saying here is that they introduce a lot of themes and they want to try and parallel Vietnam with going to Skull Island, and they want to do all these things, and they raise some of these ideas up in the dialogue and the conversation, but ultimately they say very little or are so like thinly veiled, and they just don't do anything with it. There's no poignant statements being made by the end. Like, you can see what they wanted to try and do with it, but they didn't really know how.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Sorry about my dog. She's whining.
What do you think about the end of the movie? And by the end of the movie, I mean the fact that we don't actually get to even see them make the evac point. They're just on the little, makeshift boat. Because we didn't even mention that John C. Reilly and his buddy, before he died, made a boat out of their jet parts, their plane parts, into a little raft to go upriver. We don't actually get to see them how they evacuate. It's even mentioned early on that they have no choppers left, that they would just be signaling for the boat to come and send some sort of evac, even though we saw...
I think they said there's supposed to be a refueling team that's supposed to show up in 3 days or something early on in the movie. That's why they have to get to the other side of the island.
Well, yeah, but will they have...
So there is a rescue plan. Someone's going in to get them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it was a refuel for all the choppers. They don't actually have necessarily... I mean, there's not a lot of them left, admittedly. So, I mean, maybe they can just... fit in whatever the refueling chopper or boat is.
Fit in the refuel tanks.
Yeah. But we don't even get to see them sort of make it. They just kind of they watch Godzilla, sorry, wishful thinking. They watch Kong walk off after he's had his fight and he's put Larson down, and that's it. The movie just it ends. It cuts to, of course, they knew that there was only one character that actually had any kind of heart in the movie, so that's why we end with John C. Reilly, where there's references to him, of course, wanting to go to Ridley Field and get a hot dog and a beer and meet his son and his wife, and we get to see all that, which they do in a sort of old-timey, film in the square kind of blurry box.
Right, with multiple cameras though.
With multiple cameras, yeah.
Because it switches camera angles.
Yeah, it was more of a stylistic choice. I don't think they were actually trying to pretend that this was a home movie that was being filmed. They just wanted to have it look like that. So
right.
And then the credits start playing as that's wrapping up. But
well, I mean, we know that at least John C. Reilly and Brie Larson and Tom Hiddleston and the straight out of Compton guy and the Asian girl. They all make it off because we see them in the post credit.
Well, you can.
So I guess the refueling team was able to rescue them.
Yeah, we can.
I mean, the point of it, like, it's Kong's movie. It's supposed to be Kong's movie. Him walking away as victorious is the ending of the film.
Yes, and beating his chest. I mean, actually, you know what? We never even really talked about what he does to the helicopters all that much in the big like coming out scene, because he throws a tree through a chopper. He also grabs a couple. There's actually like a really funny moment where Jackson's like yelling that he's coming to help someone, and then Kong just slaps the person away, or just slaps the chopper away, and that's kind of a funny little dark like, heh, like he dead.
Yeah, Kong versus helicopters. That's classic. It was fun to see right away. I think it's a really strong opening for his character for Kong. Like, it's a really great scene. Like, the Black Sabbath is playing, and all of a sudden a tree is just like flying through the air, and someone yells incoming, and all of a sudden it's a different film. Like, it's a really strong start.
Yes, and who can forget the iconic cut where you've got that shot where it's inside the helicopter as Kong's holding it, and the person falls into Kong's mouth, but just as the person's about to hit Kong's mouth, it cuts to one of the scientists biting into a sandwich. Classic cut. I'm being a little facetious if that's not clear.
Hey, we see in the 30s we get to see Kong chomping on humans. Like, why couldn't we see it this time?
Because it's more realistic now, and it would get an R rating.
Dang it.
We'd see like blood squirting. It would be like it would actually like, see if he actually shot like that shot looking down. If he fell in the mouth and like Kong just like sort of chomped a couple of times, it would actually be like really brutally violent. Like all the blood, and if they did it realistic,
Oh yeah.
bits like intestines.
It wouldn't be like just puppets with arms wailing. I think there are better ways of doing it. Like, there are ways of showing brutality without really showing it.
Yes.
Implied brutality. I mean, they do it, I guess, by the scientist chomping on a sandwich, but I don't know. Like, there could have been a less silly way for it.
To be fair, the spider leg going through the guy was quite brutal. Even though it's in silhouette, the scientist guy who gets like picked up off the boat with the birds, and him getting ripped apart in front of the sun, is quite brutal. There are reasonably brutal things. It's PG-13, but it goes probably as far as they were allowed to go, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So
right.
And while some of them feel overly cruel, they are just on a sort of horror movie. Let's watch a gory death scene way. Some of them are a little bit fun in that sense. I wish I cared about the characters. I wish I cared about their arcs and cared about the story. Unfortunately, I do not, and I'm left just. We said it earlier. Underwhelming. It's kind of just how the whole thing feels.
Unfulfilling. Underwhelming. It also works.
You're right. It was unfulfilling. Yes, it was both. It was unfulfilling, underwhelming, and I'm unimpressed. Just to complete the trio of uns.
It's unfortunate.
All right. Do you want to rate Kong?
Yeah, I didn't really enjoy the movie as much as I was hoping I would the second viewing. When I saw it in theaters, I left pretty underwhelmed and unfulfilled. And just talking about the movie with you makes me like it even less. There are some good moments, but I think ultimately it's just sort of underwritten, and I'll say it. I don't think it's very well directed, and it lacks the confidence that I think you brought up earlier, because it's just too try hard. And I know a lot of people really love this movie. I mean, Matt on the show loves Kong Skull Island. I think a lot of people who didn't like Godzilla like Kong Skull Island a lot. People are somewhat apologists for the film because they love King Kong so much. He's big, but that's really it. I don't know what makes Kong so special in this film versus the other versions of him, other than he's just extra big. So yeah, I don't hate the movie. It's not a horrible watch. I just don't think it's very good, especially coming off of Godzilla, which I absolutely love. I'll give it a 5.5.
If anything, that was higher than what I was expecting, given everything you said.
Yeah, I know I'm pretty negative, but I mean, there are some good moments in it. I do like the creature designs. There is some praise for the film, but for the most part, yeah, I've just been concentrating on the negatives.
Yeah, I think I was more lenient when I first saw it. I think, some of the deaths, Kong's kind of cool looking. I like that he seems kind of heroic or whatever, even if it's a bit undercooked.
Mm-hmm.
Watching it again, like the faults of the film just kind of make it. Like, I don't want to say it's something that I'll never watch again, because it is still relatively easy to watch. It's just not like a trying, taxing film. It's easy to put on, and especially if you're going to do something else while it's on. Which, I watched it properly for the show, because I always sit down and pay attention, because I'm going to talk about it on the podcast. But that is a movie where I sort of let it play again, just because we delayed the recording due to tech issues, and I just sort of let it play again earlier. And yeah, it was just kind of easy to have on as to refresh my memory. And like some of the cool shots are still cool. Some of the grisly deaths are still nice and grisly. But I think even if you're going to do something that's really simple and basic, which is man wants to get home to wife and child, even though that's simple and cliched, it does work if you don't lean on it too much. And I think this is an example of them trying to not do the normal thing, and in doing so end up with nothing instead. So I'm tempted to agree. I think I am slightly less harsh, so I will give it a 6 out of 10. I think it's watchable. I think there's some fun moments. I don't think it's completely devoid of value, even though I think this has been a largely negative discussion, because because it shouldn't be that hard to at least give me some dumb fun. But it feels like I can't just let my brain go and enjoy the dumb fun, because it's like prodding at things a little bit, or it's trying to pretend that I should care about certain things, and you're not. If you're going to be schlocky, then just be a schlocky movie, then fine, I'll get into the schlock. But
sure,
I don't think that's what it's really. It was trying to do more than that, and it fails. And because of that, you feel it, and you feel unfulfilled.
Put that on the poster.
Unfulfilled. So, I mean, it'd be like buying an empty Pop-Tart. Who wants an empty Pop-Tart?
Yeah, or like the strawberry without the frosting on the top. Apparently that one's popular too.
Man,
just get the frosting.
I even think you buy Pop-Tarts that had no frosting. What is this madness? If you have made it this far in the review, put the word unfulfilling.
Monkey business.
What?
Monkey business?
Well, I was going to go with unfulfilling because it was relevant to the...
We don't want a bunch of comments saying that our video is unfulfilling.
Alright, fine. Monkey business. You could put monkey business. If you want extra points, put monkey business and unfulfilling into a sentence together and get bonus points. There you go. That's that. Tara's going to pose for the thumbnail, so if you could dip your head a little bit just so it's not cut off. There you go. 3, 2, 1, pose! What a face. That may be the most beautiful photo of Tara that's ever been on the thumbnail we've ever had. Is the face you just put right there.
I'm not a vanity person.
So I have a question, Tara. What are you more interested in here? The 1 out of 10 reviews or the 10 out of 10 reviews? Given that we were in the middle.
Oh yeah, I think maybe the 10s.
You want to see the 10s? All right.
I want to see people defend the movie.
Let's see what some of these 10s say. From Eric Davidami, Kong Skull Island is the, all caps, perfect monster movie.
Boo.
Ratings are dead. Bring on the next thing. Wait, what? Is he talking about movie ratings? Shut up. Go away. action-packed adventure film that is a must-see event. They finally got King Kong right.
Oh.
That's the title one. There you go.
I mean, he's fine.
Kong is king. Oh, did you love when Samuel L. Jackson said, "Let's show Kong that man is king"? Did you like that line? Did you like that? Was it good? Did it?
Yeah, it was fine.
Did it tickle you? Did it tickle you? I kind of hated it, not because I think the line itself is bad. I just don't think, like, I feel like Samuel L. Jackson might have heard once by this point that his name is Kong, and I don't know if they've actually even referenced the fact that he's seen as a king in front of him, so it felt really forced to be like, hey, he's doing the name of the movie backwards. I went to see this movie twice in a row just for the sneaky epilogue. Sneaky epilogue? Is that what we're calling post-credit scenes now? Sneaky epilogues? I like it.
I guess. I mean, yeah, I guess it's an epilogue and setting up the next film, which we'll be watching.
It's the only reason why you know that technically some of the characters survived. Well, you know John C. Reilly survived. But, yeah. Also, I love that when John C. Reilly goes home and meets his son for the first, and his son's like 30. I love that he's got the big 70s sideburns. I love that John C. Reilly's like, whoa, what is this style? he's out of the 40s.
Yeah, he's part of the greatest generation. And seeing his son become a hippie, it's going to be some problems.
Yes. Did we win the war? Which one?
Figures.
Yeah, so there you go. That is that. Of course, Godzilla King of the Monsters is next on the list. So look forward to that. You can support everything we do by liking, subscribing. It's very important on YouTube for the algorithm. That's true. Tara, would you like to promote anything before we wrap up?
Yeah. I'd say if you're a fan of science fiction, then we've been working our way through the original Twilight Zone. So yeah, if you like old science fiction stories and some horror stories and sometimes comedy, go check out our reviews and follow along with us. We're working our way through season 3. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go do that. Otherwise, catch us on Twitter at @mild_fuzz for channel updates. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer. That's Elsa.
I hate every ape I see, from chimpanzee to chimpanzee.